Shit talking is good for the soul. Mm-hmm. And snitching on somebody, shit talking is the worst quality.
Lame.
I'll tell you why it's the worst quality. You were doing it too.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Finally Smart People Are Talking, where smart people are talking finally. I am lucky to be joined by 10-time Grammy Award-winning, 2-time Oscar Award-winning Phineas O'Connell. How are you?
Hi, good to be here. How you doing today?
Thank you for coming. I'm good. What is a hill that you would die on, an opinion that you would die on, fight for, if there is one?
Wow. Great question. Yeah, okay. All right. Kind of a cop-out answer, but I'll go with it. Like, the hill I would die on is like apologizing never hurt anybody and being wrong isn't that bad. Like, just own up to it. I see a lot of people who are like afraid to admit that they were wrong because they view it as weakness, or afraid to apologize because it's confirmation that they said something rude or something. And I'm like, who taught you all that? That's great. You know what I mean? You apologize to somebody, they're so caught off guard, which is a testament to how few people are apologizing to somebody, even if it's super benign. Even if we were at a dinner and I said, hey, sorry for cutting you off earlier, what was the thing you're in the middle of saying? Like, nobody's even doing that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That might be my hill. What about you?
I love that. That's actually a really positive hill. I feel like I'm expecting people's hill they're going to die on is
Diet
to be
Coke is better than regular
really aggressive. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. What hill would I die on?
I was pretty stumped. This is a good question.
Okay, the hill that I'm going to die on today is that people pleasing or people pleasers and people who are afraid of conflict and confrontation cause more harm, do more damage than they're ever held accountable for. That's my hill. I feel like people are afraid of direct conversations, direct communication. Conflict is seen as a bad thing when it doesn't have to be. And so people meander through life without ever being upfront or honest, even in simple instances where they say yes instead of no. And then later down the line, it stresses out everyone else or makes everybody else's job harder. And
100%.
so I think they are a significant portion of the problem. And everyone looks at the confrontational person as the problem, when I think they're either a problem as well or a bigger problem.
Profound. I've thought of a negative hill if we want a negative hill.
Yes, let's do it.
Shit talking is good for the soul. And snitching on somebody, shit talking is the worst quality.
Lame.
I'll tell you why it's the worst quality. You were doing it too.
True.
I think shit talking makes the world go round.
Yeah.
This is like every group of people I've ever been in. Any permutation of people leaves, the other group is like, first of all, some of the talking behind the person's back is like positive. Some of it's like that was so cool of them to do this thing, and then they're like, that was lame that they showed up so late and we all had to wait for them. Whatever it is, first of all, I'm not naive. I know that when I leave, they're saying the same thing. That's fine. I know my
negative traits.
Yeah, who cares? And if there's something I don't know about myself that they're all talking about that's negative, I don't want to know.
I'm also like, everybody, there's a difference between gossip and shit talking and having your moment of venting and being evil and malicious and dark in the corner.
If somebody was like, I'm only friends with them for their connections, fucking tell them. That's a creepy, like, dastardly behavior. If somebody is like,
I hate that she's always late.
Who gives a fuck?
Yeah,
they're always late. That's annoying. The other time I've been like called out for shit talking a few times because of these loose-lipped snitches that I'm friends with. And you know what I do when I get called out for shit talking? I go, yes, I said that. I hate that you're always late. I still love you. Yeah. And I didn't tell you because, maybe that's something you can't even change about yourself. Yeah. But it drives me fucking crazy. So now you know.
What now?
And I go, do you want to hear the stuff that they were saying about you? That's what I always say. I'm like, and do you want me to tell them the stuff you were saying about them? It's garbage.
Of course.
I think that's like the worst trait.
That's a great hill. I agree. Now, this is a segment I like to call Explain Like I'm 5, where my guest explains to me what they do like I'm 5. So I know you obviously as a great singer, songwriter, performer, but I think I know you first as a great producer. Oh. And I think what would be really fascinating is if you would explain, like we're 5, what producer is.
Yeah, I think the sort of role of a producer or a musician music producer specifically because there's also television and film producers. The role of a music producer probably has changed to some degree. And I think that, what I try to think of being a producer as in the year of our Lord 2025 is like whatever the job calls for. Sometimes I'm in with an artist where they're an amazing guitarist, an amazing pianist, and an amazing singer. And so first and foremost, I'm recording that. I'm just like putting mics up, trying to get the best take that they can give me, trying to give them feedback if I like something, but I think it could be better. Sometimes I'm in the room with an artist who isn't an instrumentalist, and then I'm crafting the whole thing. I'm playing all the instruments. Sometimes I'm in with an artist who, has other instrumentalists that they work with all the time. So I really just try to think of it as like, what does this specific project need? Obviously, the artist that I'm the most well-known for collaborating with is my sister. In that case, it's a little bit of sort of each of those. I'd say the most common version is I sit with a guitar or I sit at a piano. We write a song, and then when it comes time to record it and then produce it, I set up all the mics. I get a great vocal take from her. I play instruments until we both feel like the instrumentation and the actual production of everything is ideal. Yeah. And then I consider myself done.
This is how I know you're smart, because smart people can explain things like we're five from start to finish.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that in and of itself. Yeah. I'm not saying that I'm the best at it, but the art of explaining something. I was with a friend of mine who's like a very talented. I don't want to like dox them, but they're just really like talented and revered. And they said to me one time, they were like, I have less skill than so many people I work with, but I have a better ability, or I'm better at conveying what I do and the importance of what I do in terms of like how I got to that conclusion, what the road I was on. And he was basically sort of saying like that's what served me as my kind of ability to articulate what I do, as opposed to like my actual technical know-how.
Absolutely. I think the communication aspect of it is incredibly important and certainly a skill in itself.
I agree.
I want to create more spaces for conversations like that. That's why I wanted to do Finally Smart People Are Talking. Being able to talk about politics, conspiracy theories, experiences that people have, things like free speech. The TikTok ban, I think, is really relevant at the moment. And even as a musician, you probably have your own thoughts on how TikTok has impacted your career, the music industry, et cetera. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of people who resent the idea that they have to sort of be kind of a circus act to promote their music, and they're doing little challenges. But twofold. One is like, it's always been that way. It used to just be so much more limited and gate kept, the actual avenues for promotion. Going on Johnny Carson was like the avenue for promotion. American Bandstand was the avenue. And those were being gate kept by like A&Rs and studio. Like the sphere was smaller and smaller and smaller. So it's really just gotten bigger and bigger and easier for anyone to do it, And the other thing I talk about is like my friends who, complain about posting a Instagram reel or a TikTok. I'm like, listen, the alternative to that is you buy a month's rent of a billboard on the Sunset Strip for X thousands of dollars. And I'm too busy texting and driving to even look up at that billboard. I don't even see what's up there. Or I look up and I see it and I think, what's that name? And I drive 2 more blocks and I forget the name. The alternative is you post a TikTok for free, and the worst case scenario is it gets some views, and the best case scenario is it gets millions and millions of views, and the life of your song changes, right? So I'm very pro the whole kind of user run experience. I think that obviously like a lot of people make like the cringiest content imaginable, and so that probably isn't a positive impact on their career. But I don't even know if it's to the detriment of their career. I don't think it's like hurting a good career to make it. It's just sort of not helping. So I'm very pro the whole thing. Yeah.
I think having a direct connection to your followers and fans is really beneficial too.
Incredibly so. Yeah. I mean, you think about the period of time. I don't know that I'm an expert on this specific example, but I'll just retell my own experience as an audience member. I'm a big fan of Ray, the artist. Yes. And so I've followed Ray on, Twitter and Instagram for years. Back in 2021, I think, Ray starts posting tweets that are like, my label is shelving me. Like, this is crazy. I've got so many songs finished, ready to put out. My label won't put them out. And her audience gets a say in that. Her audience gets to go like, this is fucked up. We love your music. Why aren't you letting Ray put her music out? You know, free Ray. And and the label, they part ways. Ray drops Escapism as an independent artist. Huge, becomes huge. But again, to me, that's all thanks to her open channel of communication to her audience, right?
Absolutely.
If she didn't have those platforms, nobody would even know that she's being shelved, right? They might think, I loved that Ray album. I wonder what happened to her.
Yeah.
But the label would be, you know, preventing you from learning all of that. So I think the kind of transparency there is very profound.
Agreed. The accessibility as well. I think being able to collaborate with other artists, you know, being able to use TikTok to give yourself a career when you wouldn't have been able to
Oh my God, yeah.
walk into a label or have any access to an A&R. I think it's been great and very beneficial. So I'm excited that we've had it, and I hope we continue to have it, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Red Note or...
Red Note. Did you make a Red Note? Did you
I
join?
haven't made a Red Note. I don't speak Mandarin, so I couldn't read the terms of service.
Me either.
But yeah, I mean, you know, listen, I'm going to hazard a guess that you spend a significant portion of time on TikTok. I sure do. I'm on that thing all the time. You know, sometimes I come away from it like, you know, and turn over to Claudia and I go like, did you know this thing about the Africanized bees? You know, the argument to me is much less about like, look what it's doing to our brains. And it's much more about like, look what our brains wanted.
Yeah. I mean, this is what we've built.
We made it.
We've curated the algorithm.
Yeah.
It's showing us. We've elevated the people we chose to elevate.
We wanted a fridge that we could open and close in perpetuity that would change contents every time. That's what we wanted.
And we had other options that we didn't want.
I reset my algorithm. You know how you can go into the thing and just like and start your algorithm over?
Yeah.
That shit sucked. I was like, dude, my algorithm was boutique. It was you know, bespoke to me. It was exactly what I wanted.
I'm like, I put a lot of hours into liking and commenting and interacting with the joke of me being in every single comment section.
Oh, I'm in that. I feel like I get that line too, where they're like, why are you in these comments? And I'm like, that's the whole deal.
I'm living life.
Yeah, why not?
I think that's something that I liked about you at first too, before we became like mutuals on socials. I was like, I feel like a lot of artists or people in general are very shy to engage on social media with people or try to be mysterious. And I'm like, FINNEAS is just on here living his best life.
Yeah. Okay, so what was your relationship with like, because I'll tell you the thing I love about TikTok comments. And I think this is part of why I'm happy to comment in the first place, is like the fact that I'm like a public figure or something means virtually nothing in the comments. Like the funniest comment wins always. So like a comment that from an account that might have 52 followers that's a banger has 200,000 likes on the comment. And so I think I don't have a feeling of like, just because I have a public career or something, that my comment is going to like rise to the top. It's like the funniest thing is going to win. If I am not, you know, if my batting average is low that day, it's not going to be me, you know?
Yeah. I'm like, sometimes I forget that there are people who care that I exist. And so I comment in the comment section as if it's casual, which that's because I feel like it is. TikTok is really casual to me.
You ever comment any mean? Well, yes, of course you do. Of course you do.
What do you mean? Of course I would. Can I get a camera solo shot of me? I would never do that at all.
Because that's the only thing I try to. My anonymity, I think, being lost prevents me from being as scathing as I might otherwise like to be.
Same. I think I have to repackage it into an educational, typical TikTok video.
Oh, if somebody has some hateful, ignorant thing, but oftentimes it's like you're just seeing somebody do like the worst like, dance choreography of all time, and you want to just be like, this sucks, but that's punching down.
It's also really funny you bring that up too, because Reels has a comment section that is very different from TikTok. And I think people are a lot more hostile on Reels.
Yes.
But there was an era of TikTok where you could make content or comments that were a little more scathing. And I remember the shift because I used to stitch or respond to videos kind of having a what is going on here reaction, and people would love it. And then there was a period where suddenly the comments would be like,
That's mean. Stop
this was
punching
kind of
down.
mean, Danisha. This was them
Yeah.
being creative. And I'm like, oh, okay. Pivot point. Noted.
Okay, so you learned and took the note. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I think the punching down thing was to be avoided. So
Yeah, it doesn't make you feel like you're the good guy.
right.
And there's so many people that you can punch across to. There's so many people saying horrible things to that you can, respond to. So
Yeah.
I'll just stick to those.
And then I think I started thinking about bigger picture, like what successes I wanted on TikTok, or like what the success was going to be of what I was doing.
Yeah.
So what are your opinions on success? What's your idea of success?
I think you brought up a really interesting point, which is like success platform to platform, right? I mean, I think the thing that I felt from the early age of like 11, 12 that I wanted to do is like make music. It's like, I was like at a Green Day concert as an 11-year-old, and I was like, that's the coolest job, like playing music on stage and having an audience. It's like unbelievable. So I think that's always been kind of a wide North Star. Like if I could make music for a living, that would make me feel like I succeeded. I don't think I felt like I'll fail if I don't achieve that. Like at the time they were playing like an arena and they were in this rock band, and I was like, I think if I'm just like an engineer in a studio, that'll be pretty cool. But I do think all of it is like the, part of the dream. I think in terms of like what I view success as, it's like, again, like back to like my TikTok or something, like I'm on that app, enjoying the kind of entertainment component of it. So like 90% of the stuff I've posted on TikTok is just like stitches.
Yeah.
I'm much less interested in using that app as like here's a bunch of clips of my music video. I'll do it because if I'm proud of the video and I have little clips, like that's kind of interesting to post, but I'm less focused on like how those do than I am on like the actual kind of content based on the actual platform, which is kind of how I've tried to view each thing, right? I was just saying this to my, like a lighting designer I'm working with, because I'm on tour a lot this year. And I basically was saying, I was like, I want to make the room that I'm in look the way that it should look. I feel like there's a kind of a like across the board desire to like execute your vision and then put it in the environment that you're in, right? And it's like, to me, I'm like, no, I'm playing the Palladium. I want to make that stage at the Palladium look the best it can be. I don't want to kind of design in an abstract way and then put it there. So I think that that's like within the ramifications of like success or something. It's a little bit like what I'm talking about as a producer. It's like if I'm in a room with Billy, to succeed is to check off these boxes. If I'm making a solo album, that's a different sort of metric.
No,
like
I love that you
success.
put it that way, because I think a lot of conversations that I see online, especially regarding musicians, actors, people in the public eye, people project their idea of success onto them.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's a thing where if someone steps back from acting for a minute, where did they go? What happened?
Yes.
Their career? And my take has always been, what if this is what they wanted? What if they wanted to nail that one TV show and then retire into the mountains somewhere? There's a different idea of success for everyone.
There's a big disparity, I think, too, especially in the entertainment world, and probably the rest of the world too, although this is the one I'm in, so it's the one I'm semi-qualified to speak on, between like something being celebrated, somebody being proud of something, maybe a accolade, and whether it was fun. I was talking to an actor recently who'd won an Emmy, and I was like, dude, congrats. And we were talking about like fun experience, whatever. And he was like, I hated shooting that show. he was like, I was very proud to book the job. I was proud of the work I was doing, but like the actual 7 months I shot it, he was like, I was miserable, And again, it's like he's acting. It's not hard labor. He doesn't work in a coal mine. But his point was like, that was not an experience that was like constant fulfillment and joy, And so I think in terms of like anything, it's like, if you're thinking about it as like he made a bunch of money for that show, the reward is like he gets to go be with his family.
I think people forget that it's a job, like it's a passion, but it is a job, and so there would be that goal to step away and step back, and people seem to look at it as if there's a failure there for some reason.
I think people think that the reward must be the celebrity. And I think in many cases, that's the consequence.
Yeah, I actually want to talk about that too. And about your song, I Lost a Friend, if
Sure.
that relates in any capacity,
Sure.
because that's how it hit me.
Okay.
I think I played that song the most when I first started seeing success on TikTok,
Okay.
on social media, because it made some of my interpersonal relationships
Weird.
a little weird
Sure.
in a way that I didn't even predict.
Sure.
Because I think there is the typical trope of someone finds success and, you know, their old friends either have envy or don't like them anymore, or they
Yep.
turn on their old friends. But it also made a lot of people who I thought were kind of on for the ride or like riding with me
No,
become
get weird.
very strange.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, listen, there's a large vocal percentage of sort of people in the public eye talking about how hard it is and how much it sucks. And I don't deny. And
Yeah.
the disclaimer I'll give is like, there's a lot of cool, elements of it.
Of course.
Like getting to call a restaurant and get a seat at a table you couldn't otherwise get. It's like, that's fantastic.
You live
know?
a good life. There's a lot
there's
of
many,
benefits.
there's many things that
financial
are fantastic.
success, of course.
I think that the reason people talk about the weird sides of it the most is that it's nobody warned you. It's funny because we're sitting here talking about it, but it is like it's a big weird tectonic shift, and it's
Yeah.
like it sounds kind of incestuous and annoying when you hear celebrities talk about being friends with other celebrities.
Yeah.
Because it feels like a kind of a like glad handy.
Or you wonder why.
You're just like,
why
what?
do they
Why?
only-
Yeah. This is so random. Why are they connected? They're
Yeah.
just two famous people. And yeah, I think what you're talking about, I don't want to speak for Billy, but we both had sort of public awareness really young.
Yeah.
And yeah, your friends who've been around you every day, I think I totally get it. I probably would have felt that way too. Like they don't know how to treat that. And they're, first of all, it would be weird and inappropriate if they suddenly were treating you like you were famous.
Yeah.
If they were just like, oh my God. But it's also weird if the only way they can cope with it is to kind of make fun of it, which is like, I was just talking, I don't want to name them, but I was talking to somebody the other day and we were talking about like every person we know who was in a movie or a TV show or something as like a high schooler was like relentlessly bullied. Like, because it's the way to like equalize that environment, right?
Yeah.
If you're a 15-year-old, and you feel whatever, insecure about anything, insecure about your acne or your height or your relationships or whatever, and your friend is this movie star, you're gonna pull him back to. You're not gonna try to elevate yourself. That feels too strange and unattainable. So yeah, I mean, I do think that it's easier the older you are, because I think when you're in your 20s or something, I mean, again, unless you disagree with this, it's like when you're in your 20s, a lot of people are sort of like dreaming about something.
Yeah.
And so if you achieve your dream, they're like, oh, that's nice. I hope I also do.
Yeah.
But I think as a 15-year-old, you're like at soccer practice. And then the other one's like, I got to go to this movie premiere. And you're like, who do you think you are? Like,
Correct.
what is this?
Yeah. It's a very weird dynamic, I think. And maybe I offer a lot of empathy to the friend that's not in that
It's
experience.
very challenging. Yeah.
Because it's got to be difficult, especially if you have dreams that are in alignment
Of
with the life
course.
that person's living. It's like, how do you?
And if they're, the other thing is most people, when they suddenly succeed at anything, they talk a lot about it. And that's kind of gauche and annoying, right?
And then you want to be there for them
Yeah,
when
but
they
you're
talk
like,
about
that's,
it. But
yeah,
it's
but
also,
your friend has done this cool thing and they go on and on about it. And you're like, that's annoying. Just on a kind of a, like anything you talk,
yeah.
I think there's it's all enthusiasm and it's all kind of from a innocent place.
Of
But I
course.
empathize with the whole thing. The other thing I empathize with, and I feel this way still, even as a public person about other people, is like, I drive around listening to a podcast or something. And so I have this like intimate relationship with the hosts of that podcast. I've listened to hours of Smart Lists or Armchair Expert or Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend or whatever, And so it's like, if I meet that person, there's a big disparity. I know so much about them, right? I've heard them tell their stories about their life.
Yeah.
And I know their sense of humor or whatever, and they know nothing about me.
Yeah.
And I think we all probably in a sort of a parasocial way have a sort of internal suspicion that we'd be best friends with them if they knew who we were, right? And so you meet, and that I'm sure happens to you if you're out on the street. Like it happens to me where like I'm talking to somebody and it's just clear that they've just like seen all my little clips, right? And so they know more than I know that that we have the same sense of humor.
But I don't know them.
But
and
I
you
don't know
them.
And so I'm being polite in the way you are to a stranger,
Yeah.
and they're being warm to me in the way you are to a friend.
Yeah.
And I really empathize with that because I'm sure they are funny and I'm sure they are smart, you know, but they are a stranger to me, you know? And so when I'm in that position with other people, I have a kind of a like, I try to chill out, but it's hard. It's hard not to be like, I've listened to so many hours of you talk and I feel like we'd get along great if we, you know, were at a dinner together or something.
It's such an interesting dynamic and world that we're living in right now with everything being so social media forward, that direct interaction, the parasocial dynamic of it all. It's a lot to navigate.
Yes.
A very interesting, which I'm again very curious if TikTok does get banned, how that will change.
I think TikTok's going to be banned for about a day and a half if it even
hours.
gets banned. Have you made any like in case this all goes away?
You know,
Like any content?
I've seen some friends do it, and I was like, this just feels a little too...
It feels premature.
It's premature. It feels a little bit dramatic. I've
Yeah.
also seen some videos that people are making where they're like, since the app's getting banned, here's this really dark lore. Here's this really secret, you know, piece of information. And I'm like, what are you going to do in 48 hours when your account is back up and everyone's looking at you sideways about what you just said? But I did make a couple videos where I was like, you know, I hope that the takeaways that you've gathered from my platform have been positive, and I want you to take them
that's nice.
along with you, even though I'll still be on Instagram and, you know.
Yeah, Hank Green, who's another person I have like a parasocial only relationship with, you know? Although he commented a little science comment on my thing and was like, actually, you're wrong about that. And I was like, oh, I'm starstruck by him kind of dunking on me. He posted a video the other day that was like, save all your TikToks. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, interesting. Right. Because I feel like that gets talked about a lot, right? Your digital footprint and like that it all goes away. And I was Vine generation. Like there's stuff that I miss, you know, that I can't possibly find, little funny videos. Anyway, but it's like save all your TikToks. And I went through my whole like feed of content that I've made. And I was like,
did you save?
I was like, I don't think so. It's like, I think this can all
recreated.
Fade away into the dark ether of the internet. But you know, I don't have like, my content is particularly unsentimental. I don't have like Claudia makes these videos that are like beautiful and kind of slice of life, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like it's been one of the many boons of that relationship is like we go to Coachella and out of it comes this like really precious to me clip of us like having a nice weekend out in Palm Springs, you know. I don't make any content like that. I make like shit posts, you know. Replying negatively to the Boom Costco guys or something like that, you know.
No, Claudia's great. Also, side note, she sent me the Cyclar lotions.
It's crazy. They're so good.
So good. And I was completely shocked, not because it was her specifically, but because I see so many people.
Just because they're so excellent.
Like, everybody comes out with a makeup line, a lotion line, fragrance. And I'm like, okay, add it to the PR pile. And her Vanilla Verve.
It's crazy. It would be like if I opened a restaurant. You'd be like, okay.
We'll
and
do
then
it.
if it was so good, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's like my point is like
amazing.
when somebody that's in the space that's maybe a little bit crowded does something and you think, okay, cool. Like they're following their dream. By the way, I've been a part of the R&D of this. Like I always knew it was great and she's talented, but I just mean the public perception of like any influencer of any kind putting out any product. I agree with you. That has been the response, which I think is a flattering response to be like, it's actually so good.
Yeah, that was definitely my takeaway. I'm like, I've got it. Here's another box. Like, we'll try it, whatever. And I was like, oh, this is amazing.
Yeah, totally.
So, congratulations to her.
And for the record, I think, you know, what I've seen over the last like 3.5 years of her developing it is like, she's doing it in a different way. You know what I mean? Like she is so smart about it and, you know, really such an artist with it and has a great eye and has great taste. So I think, you know, not to, you know, bash on anybody else, but like I do know people who have, you know, some form of, whether they have like a liquor brand or a, you know, skincare or something where you can tell it's a name.
Yeah.
They're just like, oh yeah, I'm involved in that, but they're not, you know.
Of course.
Like Claudia really has like entrepreneured it, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's even a good talking point for right now, because if TikTok were to disappear, there is the convo of like, what is everybody going to do? You're going to have to get a job. You're going to do this, that, and the third. And I'm like, you see a lot of people launch these projects as a hope that it will work and take shape, but they don't either have the time, energy, resources, whatever the case, taste to make it a thing.
Yeah.
And it just fails. And I hate watching it happen. Like influencers will release merch that's just their name in the corner and it's $120 or whatever. And so it's cool to see people who have diversified and succeeded and put the effort in. So that also makes me want to jump into another like little question segment-esque thing. Do you believe in any conspiracy theories?
Oof.
One of the, I don't know if I buy into many conspiracy theories. I think I've shied away from them as I've gotten older.
Same.
But one of the conspiracy theories that has turned into somewhat of a serious conversation is the concept of industry plants, or people being planted in the industry.
Yeah.
They were saying that about Lil Nas X, saying it about Tate McRae. They're now saying it about Doechii. I don't know if you had
Doechie's so dope. Doechii is the most exciting artist of the last like 5 years.
Incredible.
Unbelievable. That tiny desk. I went over to my family's house and I was like, guess what we're all doing tonight? And like put on the tiny desk, and none of them had seen it. And they all were like, we were watching this. It's like 25 minutes long. And at the end of it, they were like, thank you for showing us that. Like,
She's
it's
incredible.
so good.
I see the conversation circulate every 5 to 7 business minutes on Twitter. It's somebody new every time. And it was the Doechii post, I think, from you, Billy, and Haley Williams.
All at the same time.
And they were like, this is suspicious. We're getting an industry plant again.
She put out a tiny desk. We all saw it. We were like, that's amazing. Like, we're all online. That's what happened.
I'm like, Doechii has been doing this
for years.
Google is very free.
I know somebody who like works with Doechii, and like, again, like just out of ignorance, I just didn't know that artist. So like they'd say Doechii, and I'd be like, cool, like good luck, you know? And then you get exposed to it and you're like, oh my God, unbelievable. You know?
Yeah.
I auditioned to be an industry plant. When I was a teenager, I auditioned for the Warner Music boy band project that Rob Cavallo, the producer, was putting together. And I went to a studio and did one session and then was fired from the I'm a wannabe industry plant. I was fired from that shit.
Fair.
They were like, he's not plant enough. This is not gonna blossom.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
I don't even really see the beef that people have with industry plants. I feel like my take is, do you like the music or not? Like, I guess there's still the glamorization of wanting to believe that people are being discovered and funded busking in subways and whatnot. But I'm like, I don't get the apprehension.
I'll tell you why it's happening. I think it's happening because it all feels impossible. I mean, I felt that way. I was like, when Billy's first song went like viral, I remember like people would tell stories about their songs blowing up online, and I'd be like, that's bullshit. Like, how does that even happen? Like, from nothing, you know? Mm-hmm. And then it like literally happened to us. Like, literally, it was like getting like 50 plays. I literally don't know how this happened. Shit, we put Ocean Eyes up on SoundCloud. Mm-hmm. Somehow it gets to a guy named Chad Hillard who ran a blog called Hilly Dilly.
Cool.
Troye Sivan Leland, big ups to Hilly Dilly. And the Hilly Dilly blog reposted it. It was like not, it wasn't like being on the Ellen show. Mm-hmm. Then it got like 1,000 streams, whatever, but it was enough to snowball.
Yeah.
And the point I'm making is like, you know, for every person that is like an industry plant or an Nepo baby, there are an equal number of like, to my knowledge, Lil Nas was just like, same thing I'm talking about. Just like magic accident, made a thing over a royalty-free instrumental, and was like that's amazing. Like that to me is like, God bless internet, TikTok, you know, Instagram, Spotify, like God bless. That
I think
stuff's
it's incredible.
Amazing.
Yeah. I look at artists like Sabrina Carpenter as well, who got the same accusation, and it's like, perhaps you guys aren't doing your due diligence when you hear the one song that does blow up.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these artists, as well, as you know, have been doing it for a very, very long time. And so this overnight success perspective, even when they were saying that you and Billy were industry plants, which I found really interesting because I worked at Life is Beautiful many years ago. Cool. And when I think it was Bad Guy that
Yeah.
was blowing up at the moment. And I remember this moment, I'm getting food, I'm working, I'm on the clock, and you guys are about to perform or she's performing. And everyone, that intro from Bad Guy starts and
Everyone went like,
everyone is running. And I'm like, oh, this is crazy. This is major. But even from there till now, or from then to now,
yeah.
so much has changed.
Oh yeah. Well, and so much up to Bad Guy. I mean, I remember listening to some aforementioned, like the Rooster Teeth podcast or something, and like it was like that year, it was 2019. I remember, total non sequitur, one of the guys on the podcast goes, "Does Billie Eilish have any other songs, or is it just Bad Guy?" But to me, that was a testament of like, whoa, because
Huge.
that had felt like this like step by step thing for 3.5 years, which obviously isn't that long in the scheme of your life, but to us is like,
Yeah. When you're
you know,
working towards.
a ladder. So to get to a song where we're like, oh my God, that song is so big that it's the only thing this guy is even aware of Billie because of, right? Like, I think that's how a big hit works. You know, anything that we're talking about, whether it's, I mean, Sabrina had 2 this past year, but like,
So good.
but anything where you have like a song that's so goddamn big that everyone has heard
It's
it,
the
even if they
song for
didn't
you.
know anything about you from the 5 years prior, you know? And that's like a gift and a curse, right? Because
Yeah.
then there's all this sort of like, there's like core audience, and then there's like all these people that are just kind of like, and I've been in that boat where you're like barely aware. You're like seeing the show and you're like, I know this one song, but you have to win those people over extra hard. 'Cause they're not
Absolutely.
indoctrinated.
Thank you for being my first guest. I feel like typically podcasts, press circuits, they're very topical, and I wanted to create a space where we could have deeper conversations, talk about politics, conspiracies, AI, which we're about to get into. So thank you again for doing this.
Of course. I feel like mostly there's a kind of a school of thought, which I disagree with, that you go do all these podcasts when you're promoting something. And I think that sucks because
Yeah.
I listen to like the same 4 or 5 podcasts, right? And it's like, oh, Willem Dafoe is the guest on all 5 podcasts that
Yep.
week. And I'm like, dude, I just heard these stories like 3 times. Like, I love Willem Dafoe. I want him to do the other podcast a year later when he's got some different stuff to say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, real
So,
opinions,
To
real
me, I'm like
conversation.
here promoting nothing.
True. Yes.
Yeah, we're just talking about TikTok bans and AI,
Whatever.
which is great to be talking to you about AI because you are AI. So it's right. The internet agrees. Okay,
I think so.
Sure.
Still am. We have to keep that facade going.
Sure.
This is
Yeah.
a mirage.
Yeah.
We're both AI, actually. That's the real secret. As a musician and as an actor, what are your thoughts on AI in the industry? That's been a big conversation as of late.
I tell you what, I have not really used AI a whole bunch. I've used it I've written a couple speeches, and then I've had AI correct my grammar. That was cool. I cook a lot, and so I've had AI change the serving size of a recipe.
Nice.
It'll be like, this serves 6. Can you make a third of this? And it goes like, changes all the metrics.
Yeah.
Exciting. I have not used AI for like, I haven't had it, you know, I haven't made Rihanna sing a song I've written or some AI trope. I did see like a fan-made music video to a song I'd done, and it was AI, and it was like, AI is still pretty weird. Like the hands all look crazy and it's weird, but it was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the first time I'd seen something that I was like almost moved by, you know,
Really?
where I was like, wow, I was like, oh, in a year, this will be amazing,
Crazy.
you know? So I don't know. I mean, I think the conversation around it is a little like a bunch of people talking about the weather that hasn't had, like, you know, talking about like, what if a storm comes? It'll be more interesting to be in the rain and talking about it. I don't know. I mean, as a musician, right, there was like a period of time where like the Lindrum and the 808 and stuff got invented. And I'm making an assumption that probably it ruffled a bunch of feathers and
Yeah.
people got all riled up and they thought we'd never use real drummers again for anything. And like, you know, everything's barrier to entry. Like, I didn't use a real drummer for years because I couldn't afford it. Like, I couldn't afford all the mics. I didn't have a friend who was good enough at drums. I didn't have a recording studio, so I used
Yeah.
samples. And then once I had the sort of resources to use a real drummer, I love using a real drummer. So like, I think that AI in some ways is going to be like a version of that, of like,
Agreed.
oh, I want to accomplish this thing, but I don't have $2 million to hire a crew and film it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to render it for
Yeah.
free. But I think I am making the assumption that people are still going to want to actually fabricate things as opposed to just have sort of digital, somnambulance or whatever.
Yeah, I think I'm torn. I've heard a lot of different conversations, and I think the corporate perspective of using AI to take advantage or exploit people is going to be an issue that
Yep.
people are trying to get ahead of, which I think is smart. I also think AI might drive up the interest in man-made things, like the value of that.
Yep.
If we can outsource everything to computers, that interpersonal relationship
Yep.
is going to be more important.
Agreed.
But I also agree with the stance of it's kind of telling us not to invent computers because we're going to put the scribes out of business, where we're going to have people existing differently. AI is going to reach a point where it can do things in the medical field, in the
Yeah.
legal fields, but we're still going to need people in different avenues and different capacities.
I think at heart, my feeling about AI is like all arguments against AI would be valid if things were so great, and they're pretty bad. Like we have like little children making iPhones.
Well, I was also going to say the environmental argument we want to make, and then you say, okay, well, what else do we
Well,
talk
and AI
about?
is bad for the environment and requires all this water cooling, and it has to be, I think, desalinated water to be as cold as it needs to be to cool all the servers and hard drives and stuff. It's all a trolley problem. But I
Yeah.
think that to me, it's like, again, like corporate abuse of employee power or whatever. It's like
Yeah.
that's all bad already. I don't even know if AI is going to make that worse, or maybe it'll make it better.
Yeah.
And again, like factory work, sort of like slave labor. It's like that's happening.
Yeah.
That's not AI.
If we're going to
know?
have the conversation
Yeah,
about
there's
what could
plenty
happen,
of stuff.
let's have the full conversation.
Yeah, I mean, this is so soon to talk about this, and obviously the main thing is I wish none of it had happened. We just lost basically all of the Palisades and all of Altadena in LA. Palisades is a neighborhood that I've only been to a handful of times. Very beautiful. And Altadena, I basically grew up in like Pasadena, so I was in Altadena all the
Yeah.
time. And again, it's like anything. It's like the thing we would have liked not to have happen is for Altadena to burn down. The thing that now has to happen, which is Altadena gets rebuilt. It's like, let's try to be thoughtful about this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like LA, before the automotive industry, got its claws in it, LA had one of the best public transit systems in the United States.
Wow.
And the automotive industry basically got it to be torn down. Like they were like, let's gut the train cars and the trolleys and everything because our car sales will go up.
Yep.
And it's like, if you have an opportunity to build something again, to start over, it's like, be thoughtful, like make it better, So I think that's the AI conversation is like, I think that a friend of mine said that AI, his feeling about AI is like comparing it to anything. It's like the thing that's really worth comparing AI to is electricity. Like
Yeah.
it's like before and after electricity. Like, yeah, when that got invented, people were standing around fanning people with, giant like pieces of, board and, there was a big kerosene industry because
Yeah.
nobody had electricity, right? But it's like, it's gonna change things that much. It's gonna be crazy.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it solves a bunch of problems and doesn't exacerbate everything that's already bad. But it's like, even the climate crisis conversation is like, we were doing that on our own
Correct.
perfectly well. Like we were
Correct.
already, warming the global. Like it was already going downhill. So I'm less afraid of new things than I think other people like to be.
Yeah. I also heard the phrase, I think it was the cure to bad technology is good technology, or the savior or safety, where AI is going to exist. It's existing. We're going to keep seeing things develop. And what we should be hoping for, asking for, pressing for is the correct, possibly legislation, of course, but also technology to combat the things that we aren't going to be able to work around or work against on our own, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So-
Totally. It's a good way to put it.
You also brought up the fires, which have been horrific, obviously, heartbreaking to see. Something that I wish tragedy didn't highlight, but it does highlight, is how much people come together in moments like that.
Oh, but thank God, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's That's the beautiful part of all of it.
Yeah, I've only been in
Yeah.
LA for about a year and a half, and I think LA gets the
Well,
reputation.
it's so big, hard to feel like it's a community, right? It's just
Yeah.
enormous.
And people don't understand Los Angeles, I don't think, or
True.
understand the community here. And we
True.
even saw that with some of the reactions to the wildfires. And I'm just looking and I'm like, in the past week, I've seen so many people come together, fundraise, crowdsource, crowdfund. You know, people's GoFundMes are making so much money. You are doing a benefit concert, like everything.
It's really beautiful. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine during that period of time where it was like, looked like maybe all of LA was going to burn down. It was like the Sunset Fire and the Sunswept Fire and the Kenneth Fire. And I remember thinking that day, like, oh, my house might be about to burn down. And if it doesn't, I got to rock out extra hard. Like, I got to like really be in LA and really be a part of the community because so many people are displaced. So many people are going to, you know, they're like, anyone who's displaced that has no home to go back to isn't going back to that home at least until it's rebuilt, if they had fire insurance, whatever. Then there's like the people that are like the one house remaining on the block of rubble, which is like, what are you going to live on the block of rubble where it's full of, you know, lead and asbestos and whatever. So I was like, if I have the like, you know, rare privilege of like my house didn't burn down, I got to really be here, like, you know, going to the restaurant that's going to be, you know, trying to stay open and housing a friend and whatever else it is, you know, because like that to me is like being part of a community. And I'm not even a no shade to transplants. I think being a transplant is like beautiful, but like I am from here. I grew up in LA. So I think I have just maybe that much more of a, like, I don't have a hometown to go back to. It's LA, you know? Yeah, it's very beautiful. That quote that went around that was like, climate change will manifest as a series of, you know, videos you'll see on your phone that get closer and closer until you're the one holding the camera. You know,
It's about true. It's coming.
pretty accurate.
I don't know if you're a Bo Burnham fan, but every single time something horrific happens, I just hear the Funny Feeling song in the back of
Funny
my
Feeling,
head.
I forget the name of the Ocean's Rising.
Oh yeah.
All Eyes on Me. I think that's All Eyes on Me. Yeah, he's very brilliant. He's really like, I've been guilty of trying to write some songs about like, you know, the end times, and I think I've done a mediocre job, and he's really done a unbelievable job. I think he articulates a kind of a like that there's a kind of a like beautiful Greek tragedy
Very much so.
element to the whole thing, you know.
That's what I keep hearing in my head whenever I see clips. I'm like, it's getting closer. It'll be over soon.
Yeah, 2021, right, where he had that 20,000 years of this and 7 more to go.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah, we shall see.
I feel like that makes me want to ask you about songwriting and like your process of that and how you know when something's done and what inspires you, or if something, have you been inspired recently to create something new? I know that you did just recently come out with
an album.
Incredible album.
Thanks. I know something's done usually when I don't have that desire to add to it. If I listen to it and I'm like, oh yeah, this feels great. You know, I think oftentimes when you're creating anything, you're like listening to a demo or a first draft and you're like, oh, I can hear something in my head happening there or whatever. So that's usually when I know something's done. I feel like I started writing songs when I was a teen, and I just like sit around and write all the time. And then as a young adult, I was working with Billy a bunch and sort of writing through that lens of like trying to be a collaborator to her and help her articulate herself. And I think at this point, like, I really enjoy the kind of craft of it. And I think I know some people who like have something happen to them and they sit down to write a song. And I sort of look at it as like, stuff's always happening to everybody, whether something happened to me that day or happened to a friend of mine and I heard about it. And so I just kind of I write songs as a kind of a meditation practice. Like I just sit down to make music.
Yeah.
And I keep a kind of a running list of like, whether it's like melodies that I thought up and hummed, or it's like little pieces of conversation. If we're on mic, so it's all on record, but like maybe if you and I had been sitting around, you'd said something, I thought, oh, that's a really thoughtful way to put that. I'd never thought about that. Write it down, you know, come back to it. But for me, it's more about a kind of a like the way that some people might do like the artist's way and write 10 pages in the morning or whatever it is. Like I like to just kind of be loosely disciplined of like, I go to my room that the piano's in and I sit at the piano, and I don't worry so much about like, I've got to write a song that I feel great about today. I just worry about like creating something from nothing.
Yeah.
And I have a little bit of a like, I find making music and writing songs a little bit like, you know, TikTok or a video game or something. Like once I've picked it up, it's a little hard to put it down.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's like that barrier to entry where you're like, you know, that feeling where you're like, I really should call that person back, but you blow it off. And then once you talk on the phone, you're talking for like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's like a little bit like that, where I'm like, I should go sit at the piano and play some stuff. I'm hungry. I'm going to go grab some food, whatever. But if I really just go over to the piano, then it's like, then I get very swept up in it.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to, you know.
How often do you think, and I think this is like a selfish question, how often do you go into the studio or start your writing process and make something that's going to go nowhere, or you just hate it, or it's going in the trash, or...
All the time. I mean, I almost, with the exception of like a couple instances, like the making What Was I Made For Barbie, where I think kind of every step of the way, that project was like getting a job opportunity, right? It's like, hey, Greta wants to talk and, you know, talk about this idea of writing something for the movie, and then like go see a piece of the movie and go whatever. So that was very kind of task based. When Billy and I are sitting to write that song, we know that if we do a good job, it's going to go in the scene in this movie. I would say with those areas as like an exception, I kind of always think that everything is going to just live on my hard drive forever. Like, because then it alleviates the, you know what I mean? If I sat in front of you and tried to write a song from scratch, I'd get all self-conscious.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure.
I'd be like, oh, I don't, you know, Danisha probably thinks I'm dumb or I'm bad at this. Like that's how, because the process of writing something good is messy.
Yeah.
So I just sort of think none of it's ever going to go anywhere. And then if I love it, I work on it until it's done. Ironically, when I was making the album, like every other day we'd make a song that we'd be like, that's the one. And then we'd listen back to it like a week later and be like, that one sucks. Like, it's funny how different, we talked about this at the very beginning, like the difference between how something feels to make versus how it is to receive, profound. Like I've had songs that were so annoying to, like the song When the Party's Over by Billy, like producing that song sucked. Like it was just tedious and challenging, and the way she sings that song was really hard for her, and the layering of the vocals and getting the instrumentation right, it was just like really tedious. We love how it sounds. You know, I don't regret it. But if you were like, can you do it again, I would dread it. I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I made it, I don't have to make that again. You know, and then there have been songs where we're like flying, you know, where you're just like, that was a joy every step of the way to make. You know,
of course,
whether or not it was received well, it's like it was fun to make.
I think that's really impactful to hear about, because you and Billy, and I credit Lana Del Rey with the same thing. Some
Lana.
artists, I love her. Some artists are really, really good at world building.
Yes.
And in fact, I think that's a specific asterisk of what makes someone a superstar.
Yes,
where
I agree.
I could create, I know what Billie Eilish, the theme park would look like, because I was there for her different albums and eras, and it was so well done. Similarly with Lana Del Rey and many other artists. And so I think when I look at a world like that, or any other artist looks at a world like that, it feels so complete and so perfect. It's like they must have just gone in and knocked it out of the park, and one and done type of style. And so it's so great to hear that the process is messy, and that's normal, that there are parts that aren't fun or that you don't enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, not to spill somebody else's tea, but I just find this so fascinating. I love it so much. Like, I was listening to Lana's music at 14. That was when I got way into Born to Die, the album.
Which, oh my God.
Unbelievable album. And I know she's been very, very gracious to us. And that's another example of like a person that I probably feel like, you know, I feel like I know so much about her from how much of a fan I am. And then I try not to creep her out, you know? But I'm also friends with Emil Haney, who was one of the producers on that first album. And I was talking to him at the end of 2023. I was at like a dinner and he was there. And I was like, dude, I listened to Born to Die in its entirety on the flight here. I was in New York. And I was like, it's so good. And I was so struck by exactly what we were talking about, the world building, the lyrics. she sings about Cipriani's basement, and she's in that album she calls herself the Queen of Coney Island like 6 times, and so many great turns of phrase. She bats her little Bambi eyes.
Incredible.
And God, there's so many Pabst Blue Ribbon on Ice. There's so many like colorful things. Again, as a 14-year-old, that's like first time I'd ever heard of a Pabst Blue Ribbon, and I didn't know that it's like a shitty beer. Like but all of that's like the color to it, right?
Yeah.
And she's singing about it in such a romantic way. But here's the genius of Lana Del Rey, is that I'm talking to Emil about this, and he was like, she'd never even been to Coney Island. He was like, she was a literary appreciator of all this amazing old New York literature. And he said he was like, that to me is like how much of a storyteller she is. That she was creating this world that wasn't, I think we assume that these artists lived everything. Billy and I didn't live 80% of the stuff we're writing about. We're just writing this piece of fiction that we are, trying to make seem as real as possible. And I remember him saying like, I was like, we should go to Coney Island. Like, you should know what it's like in Coney Island. But like, that's like, she knows from, Great Gatsby or whatever else, what it feels like to her. She knows how to inhabit that, So I'm such an appreciator of, like, to me, that hearing that she hadn't been to Coney Island, like, made me appreciate her even more.
Yeah.
That she wasn't just like, yeah, that's where I hang out all the time. She was like, knew what she was, sort of creating. It was so cool.
Incredible talent. I feel like songwriting is overlooked in some capacity when it's
the
incredibly
poetry
difficult to tell a good
and
story.
the kind of fiction of it all. So cool.
I feel like I'm also curious. So was Bad Guy the moment that you think changed everything? Is that what you would say? Or was Ocean Eyes or something else?
I would say that like everything felt like incredible stepping stones.
Yeah.
It's like Ocean Eyes did really well. And then the next song of Billy's that did really well was probably Bellyache did really well. And then like Watch and I Don't Want to Be You Anymore did really well. And that was all over the span of like 2 years. It was into 2017.
Yeah.
In 2017, we started working on her album. And then the other thing that really blew up was we did a song with Khalid we wrote it in 2017 and then it came out in 2018. And that was a big moment. He was obviously at the time enormous.
Yeah.
So it was like, it wasn't surprising to us that a song with him who was enormous was doing well. But then I think what really happened was we were working on Billy's debut album, and each thing that came out from it, When the Party's Over came out and crushed and wasn't even announced as a single from the album, but it was in our heads, we were like, that's going to be on the album. That song did so much better than we thought it was going to do.
Yeah.
Then we announced the album with Bury a Friend. Bury a Friend did so much better than we thought it was going to do. And then the album in total did so much better than we thought it was. Like, the album went #1 and was this big success. And suddenly, the size venue that she could play was twice as big. And it was like, and then I would say even like Bad Guy, we'd already like, so many of our expectations had been surpassed that by the time I kind of looked around and realized that like Britney Spears was dancing to Bad Guy on Instagram and James Corden was doing like a version of Bad Guy with like comedy lyrics and stuff, like that kind of stuff that happens with like a big popular song.
A Justin Bieber feature.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's crazy. But I think there was so many elements to that of like, we were like, oh my God, that's crazy. But everything had just gone so much, better than we'd hoped and expected. So I'd say in the kind of wake of all of that,
it was everything.
That was the period of time where you're like, wow, that's really different. And then I'm sure, two things. One is like, you either feel like pressure and fear, or you just feel like so sort of like arrogantly proud of yourself. Like, I definitely think we went into, I don't speak for Billy, but like I went into making that second album like We Can Do No Wrong, which is like not how you should make an album. But I suppose it's better than being like paralyzed with fear. But we definitely were like working on songs and I'd be like, this is amazing.
It's a hit.
Yeah, exactly.
Bounce it out.
Like when I listened to that album as a producer, I think I could have worked harder. I could have like been more focused, and I was just so kind of like, wow, we did it. It's done. We did it again. And I think that we took how that felt into the third album of like, no. Like, we're craftsmen. Like we want to like really devote ourselves to the actual process, and it became much less about like worrying about a commercial success and much more about like I was fond of saying, well, we made the third album, like if I knew this album was going to be shelved, if I knew that no one would ever hear it, how would I want it to sound? Like if I wasn't worried about charts or label, like if I just was like, it has to be the exact thing I want it to be.
Yeah.
And so that was how we made it. And you know, luckily it's done really well, but I also listen to it and think like, that's how I wanted it to sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it a lot mentally at that time? Like, were there any precautions isn't the right word, but did you guys find yourselves, you know, acutely attentive or aware of how you were doing mentally? I feel like blowing up really quickly, quote unquote, at least it looks really quick on the outside.
Yeah. I mean, that's a little bit like Happier Than Ever is an album about that to some degree. Like Getting Older is a song about, you know, kind of that feeling of like, damn, strangers maybe understand me more than my close friends do. And there's lines in Didn't Change My Number or an NDA about like stalkers and random stuff like that. So that album kind of is grappling with it, but again, trying to do it in a way that isn't maybe alienating. I think so few people have that lived experience of like what happened to Billie at the age she was, that we were trying to be like authentic to how she was feeling emotionally, but also trying to be like broad enough that, you know, if you were just dealing with
your own personal
thing, it would hopefully relate. But yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about this of like, you know, getting really famous at like 17 is really crazy, but also like being 17 is really crazy, and being a woman at 17 I'm sure is crazy. And it's like, I just think there's like, I think a lot of people have it really hard and almost no one has it super easy.
Yeah. Everything has its own unique
challenge,
negative experiences and challenges that no one else is going to know how to relate to necessarily or vocalize. So I never want it to seem like, you know, the poor famous, how do you do it type of angle. Yeah. Not that at all. I feel like we should go into a segment I call Pedal of Honor, which is the closing segment. And it's just an opportunity to highlight anyone you think that has been underrated, or maybe not even underrated, but should have more attention, get their petals, their flowers, someone you think is impressive from any walk of life that you can think of.
Great question. Let me see if I can give a thoughtful answer to this.
Yeah, take your time, please.
I would say that the person I'd like to give Pedal of Honor.
Pedal of Honor.
Beautiful. Chelsea Dodson, who works at Interscope / Darkroom, where Billie is signed, and Michelle Ann, they're both in the video creative department there, have just been like the biggest assets to Billie. And, you know, anything where, you know, because Billie directs most of her own videos and edits most of her own videos, it's always in, you know, the person aiding and facilitating her is, you know, Chelsea and often Michelle. And they're both like, the thing that they've done, especially for Billie, is like, you know, they took a 16-year-old person and took her seriously. And I think that it's easy and understandable to not take a 16-year-old seriously, especially because they're talking about stuff they've never experienced, you know. But I think they really understood that she had a vision and she had goals and she had incredibly creative ideas, and they helped her facilitate them. And even like, you know, I pop over to Billie's house and she's with Chelsea and they're brainstorming some new cool thing. And I think that they are underappreciated creative talents. And they haven't only worked with Billie, they've worked on amazing other videos for other Interscope artists over the years, and you know, they're often the common thread of a bunch of amazing stuff. So I think in terms of, and I'm sure if Billie were sitting in this chair, she'd have more to articulate about them because she works more closely with them than I do. But I see them and all their hard work, and I think they're, you know, comparatively to many other people we work with who are also brilliant and talented, but are given the credit they deserve. I think they are deserving of more credit than they're given.
I love that. I know you're not here promoting anything, but For Crying Out Loud was amazing.
Thanks.
Incredible album.
Appreciate it. Depending on when this comes out too, I'm on tour, so I'll be in your city.
Thank you for joining
Yeah.
us. And thank you guys for watching. Finally, Smart People Are Talking. We were smart people who finally talked. And I will see you guys in the next episode. I didn't think of a closing.
I thought that was great.
That was great.